Meanwhile, a cluster of coronavirus cases is breaking out in restaurants in the Arcadia and Scottsdale region. In the last week, some restaurants have announced they have employees who have come down with the virus. Team 12's Michael Dowda joins us. And Michael, the employees are concerned about what this could mean moving forward.
Yeah, guys, I'm actually at that Zips location on 36th Street in Indian School. And they said in a statement, quote, "Well, it finally happened. Zips has its first positive COVID-19 result." But what employees of this Zips location are saying is that they knew about that positive test back on Tuesday. And since then, 4 more employees have tested positive. Now, Zips is not the only restaurant to have a positive case from employees. The Porch, in fact, closed because of a positive case. Chelsea Kitchen has moved to takeout only. And Dutch Bros, just down the street on Indian School, is still open, but with new procedures in place. And we spoke to an employee from the Zips location who is concerned at the lack of transparency and wondering how they should exactly move forward.
And it does hurt. It hurts the business. But at the same time, it's also, even if it gets to one person that they fall deathly ill or something even, causes like that to spread even more, it's not worth it to risk safety if just to keep the restaurant open.
Now, Zips says they are planning on keeping this location open, moving staff from other locations to help fill the gaps that they have right now. And as of last week, well, it was their company policy to have no mask or gloves for those serving food. We're in Phoenix. Michael Dowda, 12 News.